Hi there, good evening. Good evening and welcome to our community rewilding panel discussion. Hope everyone's coming in by now. I think we are at 7:30. So I'm Claire Blindell. I'm the Community Engagement Officer for the Yorkshire Rewilding Network. I'm also a community rewilder myself. Tonight we've got a great evening for everyone. We're going to hear from 4 experienced panelists who all make a difference to communities and to rewilding in various ways. We're hopefully going to learn a lot about community rewilding. And I think we're going to see that at its heart, even though there are lots of differences between community rewilding projects, at its heart, people are working together to enact nature recovery around the areas where they're living. So in a moment or two, we're going to hear a short presentation from each of our panel members, which will just give us a flavour about the work that they're doing in their communities. We're then going to move on to a main panel discussion, which will be the longest session of this evening. And after that, we'll have a short session of audience questions. So if you have burning questions, please do put them in the chat while we're going along. Okay, well, we'll get started, I think. So I'm going to introduce you to our panel members, and I think we'll introduce them one by one. And I'm going to go to, and she's at the top of my screen, Jo first, please. This is Jo Rawson. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen, so hopefully you'll be able to see that in one moment.
This is Jo Rawson from Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, everybody.
Hi, yeah, so my name's Jo Rawson and I'm the Community Engagement Manager at Yorkshire Wildlife Trust. So my role is all about leading on Team Wilder, which, as some of you might know, is all about supporting and empowering people to make a real and lasting difference for nature in their neighbourhoods. So Team Wilder was born out of the knowledge that wildlife is in crisis, while many communities across Yorkshire are experiencing their own crisis too, and we know that nature can really help people's well-being. As a wildlife trust, we know we can't reverse nature's decline alone, so we launched Team Wilder a year ago to empower and enable communities across Yorkshire to come together and be the difference nature needs. By 2030, we'd love to see 1 in 4 people in Yorkshire taking meaningful, positive action for nature's recovery as part of their daily life. This equates to 1.3 million people in Yorkshire. With 25% of people taking visible actions for wildlife, this will create the social tipping point required to reverse nature's decline. So Team Wilder is how we will achieve our tipping point. So at the heart of Team Wilder is a community organising approach. So community organising is fundamentally about building relationships with communities such as yourselves and really listening to your needs, then working with you to identify and understand the things you want to change and the difference you want to make. By helping communities to identify opportunities, then supporting them through building skills and knowledge to seize those opportunities, we see confidence growing in the actions they take. Creating action in this way creates community ownership to continue and ensures longevity and long-term benefits for both people and wildlife. Sharing stories is a vital component of Team Wilder, and our web pages showcase some fabulous case studies, videos and blogs, and acts as a platform to amplify the voices of the communities who are doing incredible things for nature as well as for people. These stories enable groups to share their success and learn from each other and inspire others to get involved. They're available online, on social media. We often share stories in the press and through our quarterly Team Wilder newsletter as well. So our hope is that these stories will inspire others to get involved, and like a ripple effect in water, Team Wilder will spread and carry more people with it. Our Wildlife Gardening Award has so far recognised and rewarded 380 gardens across Yorkshire for their incredible efforts to support wildlife in their gardens. And we've got a new exhibition at Hull Street Life Museum from the 21st of April to the 16th of June. And that's going to showcase all the fantastic community-led action that's been taking place in and around Hull as well. So our Team Wilder web pages provide an online hub of inspiration and information for Team Wilder participants with a wide range of toolkits on everything from improving spaces for wildlife to setting up a community group and getting your voice heard. Accessing this hub is quick, easy and free. All you need to do is sign up to be a part of Team Wilder on our webpage. Bringing people together to connect and share learning is a key part of Team Wilder too. So we're going to be running community empowerment days again throughout the year with talks and workshops. And the next one is on the 21st of April at Hull Street Life Museum, if you'd like to come along. And then to enable us to empower communities in a really relevant, authentic and sustainable way, we've recruited a team of Team Wilder community champion volunteers. So they're kickstarting action in their neighbourhoods and a network of champions is growing across Yorkshire. So over the last year, we've built partnerships with a diverse range of groups, supporting them to act for nature at different scales and using a range of different interventions as we seek to support them to improve their local spaces for nature in a way that's really achievable and meaningful to them. So a number of these groups have made a commitment to dedicate 30% of their land to nature's recovery by 2030, which is incredible, isn't it? So this work is really contributing to increasing land for nature in urban areas and creating those all-important green corridors, as you can see here. As I've said, Team Wilder is really about supporting communities to make a difference for wildlife, but the community organising approach that we employ puts people at the heart of the process. So we're delighted to see the positive outcomes that people are experiencing because of getting involved, as you can see here. So ultimately, people have the power to change the outlook for nature in their neighbourhoods. You can and will make a difference by joining Team Wilder. So please take a look and sign up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. That was brilliant. So positive and inspiring. Thank you. And exactly on 5 minutes. So top of the class for Jo.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm going to move on now, and we're going to go to Karen, please. Can we go to Karen from Molescroft Wildlife Network? Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening, Karen.
So I'm Karen Murby from Molescroft Wildlife Network. Thank you for inviting us and thank you for these webinars. One of our committee members met us through your Christmas quiz, an example of networking in action. Molescroft Wildlife Network is nearly 2 years old and is a small community wildlife group in Beverley, east of York, north of Hull in East Yorkshire. We came together to enrich opportunities for our wildlife treasures and encourage a biodiverse parish. This is from our new leaflet, which is a thing of beauty. We care about our local community and the green spaces within it and want to make Molescroft alive with wildlife, creatures of the day and night, flora, birds, invertebrates, whatever. Our underlying principles are to tie in with the definition of rewilding, which is that it's a state of mind. It's to enable natural processes to thrive for species and habitats by nurturing and nourishing them, and then adding a lattice of connectivity between the sites and between the many and various people and organisations. Molescroft Wildlife Network is, in itself, rewilding in practice. It's evolving in its own way, at its own speed. It seems to have a life of its own, which is remarkable to watch. We drew up an overview and we're open to a wide diversity of approaches and to multiple activities. That's a description of what we do, apparently, according to our insurance. We do multiple activities. The debate amongst people can be toxic. Securing our wildlife survival and ours is too important to allow discourse to be divisive. From the start, we aim to treat people with respect and patience, trying to see what the constraints that they were under were and view things from where they were standing. We try to disagree amicably and reach consensus. We try to find common ground and build upon that. Molescroft Wildlife Network uses tea and time and fruit cakes as our building blocks. We are strategic. We organise volunteer practical events with Team Wilder's support, who've been fantastic, but we aim to change, in the fullness of time, our local authority, parish council and so on, to improve their management for biodiversity of the lands they are responsible for. As it turned out, Molescroft Parish Council is very positive, and every single one of the East Riding staff we have met have been trying their very best to do what it is that they can. Also, we try to do no harm. So we have a strong scientific base. We're conducting ongoing surveys to establish a baseline of the flora and fauna within a parish, and researching the ways in which we can enhance habitat areas to increase biodiversity. We promote citizen science. The practical outcomes are we've already been a conduit for the transfer of resources, information and advice between our local patch and regional and national organisations. We now have a new pocket wildflower meadow managed by the local authority, hopefully. We're improving habitats and connections, and we have funding for 2 ecological restorative management plans for a graveyard and for a wildlife haven, both from the parish council. It is a haven. A core aim is to inspire at least 1 in 4 Molescroft residents to take positive action for nature by 2030. To this end, we got funding from East Riding Council through Hay Smile Foundation for the Molescroft Hedgehog Highway project. This is a leaflet, an event to aim to support new local hedgehog champions, identify hedgehog highways, make winter nests, encourage wildlife gardening, linking to schools and so on. All of this information is on our website, and if you're interested, have a look at that. We put information boards up. Men in Sheds made them. We created a website, joined the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust stall at the Beverley Minster Eco Fair, which was great, and deliver presentations on our work to inspire and influence others. We foster community wildlife networks within Molescroft, such as a wildlife education forum. We build many relationships, such as with Hull Natural History Society, a local green and social prescribing project, Humber Forest, Wombles, who collect litter, Civic Society, and of course, Yorkshire Wildlife Trust. Challenges: constitutions, insurance, admin, policies, bank accounts, blah, and there's not enough time in the day. Nearly finished. A quote from a committee member: "We have become activists for nature. Instead of passive observers of the environmental crisis we're living through, our work has been fun." Instead of being passive observers of the environmental crisis we're living through, our work has been fun, exciting, frustrating, enlivening, and a massive learning experience. Above all, it's rewarding, as we are beginning to make a difference by influencing the people who can make change happen and bringing people together for the community. We have dreams, and trying to turn things around gives us hope, not despair.
Thank you, Karen. That was wonderful. I love that quote at the end. I think you've really summed up community rewilding. Also, I think a lot of people are going to be moving to Molescroft to see this wildlife heaven and come and have some of your fruitcakes. Thank you. That was brilliant. Right, we're going to go on to Francesca now, please. Francesca from Mant. Thank you.
Hi, I'm just going to share my screen. How to do it? Let me see that. So, yes, I'm Francesca Bridgewater, and I am a major part of Mant, Menster Area Nature Trust, and also Friends of Western Woods. But my opinions will be my own tonight. But I want to tell you about what we've been doing. So, my own history is somewhat checkered. I started as a scientist, and then when I had kids, I became a garden designer, and then I joined a housing association. But I sort of feel like my real work only began after I retired. Environmentally, I have been a member of Friends of the Earth since the 1980s. So I've been sort of working for the environment sort of for a long time, although I'm conscious that I was initially much more into the sort of CO2 emission side. And I was guilty of thinking, like a lot of people, that biodiversity and nature was, nice to have. You'll be glad to know that my education has evolved somewhat since then, and I am now much more aware of the vital side that biodiversity and nature takes in keeping our world livable in, and it's all interlinked. There is no divide between climate change and biodiversity, and the solutions to both. So once I retired, I was lucky enough to go on a visit to East Keswick Wildlife Trust with some other people. I'm just trying to get it to, oh, we are. So we were so inspired by what they've been doing. They're just outside Leeds, that we decided to try and do something similar and set up our own nature trust in our village in Menston, which is between Leeds and Ilkley, for those who aren't local. So these are the 5 trustees of the charity. And the aim was really to do our best to protect and enhance habitats for nature, but also very much about educating and engaging people with nature. And we did set up the constitution so that should we get the chance, we could buy land. Initially, though, we were really fortunate in that in the village, we have a field right in the middle of the village, which we were given the chance to manage. So we're sort of been cutting our teeth on this field, learning to grow wildflowers, getting the local children from the school to help us plant trees down one side. And we've also been learning how to do conservation grazing with our friends Annie, Kai and Joni, who we borrow each year from East Keswick Wildlife Trust, and they become great favourites with the village. But one of the advantages of having the field in the middle of the village is that it's a real showcase for us, which is fantastic, and lots of people walk past every day and can see what's going on there and get drawn in. So, as I say, we did. We're lucky that we had set our constitution up so we could buy land. And when the Western Wood came up for sale near Otley, you can see it just here in the top of the north of Otley. This is the wharf. We've got Burley opposite. So Western Wood is here. It came up for sale last year, and we had a massive crowdfunding campaign with various other groups in the Wolf Valley, and we are very fortunate. By December, we had managed to, after to cut a long story short, we had managed to buy the wood, which we now own for the community. So the idea is very much that this should be a community wood, and that everyone should be able to use it. So it's about 20 acres of mixed woodland, which is very exciting. And these are all the groups, or a lot of the groups that have been involved. We've got a huge range of expertise there, including plastic expertise from Wharfdale naturalists who have already done a survey of the wood with us, and we'll be doing a lot of work going forward. We've also had a loan from Julia Davis of We Have the Power, which enabled us really to buy the wood and put in a high enough bid. But we are still trying to pay that off. So if anyone feels moved to give us a donation, then please go to the MANT website, where it's very easy to do. That's mant.org.uk. So going forward, I say we only got the wood finalised in December. We've set up a Friends of Western Wood, along with all these different groups, and they are now looking at managing it going forward. So we're at the stage where we're really trying to see what we already have and finding out what we need to do to get various grants. But we've been very fortunate that the local Dry Stone Warning Association have already got stuck in and are mending the long wall we've got all the way around it. It'll take years, but no, that doesn't really matter. And we've already had a very successful litter pick. So it was lovely to see people coming and feeling it was their wood and they could come and get stuck in. There's going to be a lot going on there. So if anyone wants to join the mailing list, either go to the MANT website and join it from there, or this is the QR code for it. No, I think that's a basic.
Fantastic. Thank you, Francesca. Is that your final slide?
That's my final slide.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you. I have to I have to admit to everybody that that is a project that's very close to my heart, because I did actually work with Francesca on the buying and the campaign of this woods, and it is a fantastic project that has really inspired a whole community and a whole town. So thank you, Francesca. Right, last but not least, we've got Tom, who is going to talk about his work in Leeds, and he's also sits on our committee at Yorkshire Rewilding Network. So thank you, Tom.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Well, what a hard three panelists to follow there. Well, anyway, I'll start by sort of introducing myself and my journey to Yorkshire. I grew up in a rural town in Northumberland, and probably then that was when my passion and connection with nature started. My whole young life, I was growing up in the woods, running around, following rivers, looking at wildlife, and generally just loving everything I was seeing. Through that, I then also always started working in summer camps with young people, and then a passion grew for working with young people in these wild places. Then I moved to Leeds and to do my degree in IT, which is completely different, I know, but from doing that, I was still able to relate it to the wild, and ended up doing my dissertation on impacts of deer that had on Scottish woodlands, and found out from my findings how much rewilding could actually benefit these states. Since moving out of university, I've now worked at West Leeds Activity Centre for 3.5 years, and I've been the lead activity worker here for almost a year now. It feels much longer. West Leeds Activity Centre is a Leeds City Council owned site, and I do work for Leeds City Council. And we are based in Armley on the west side of the city, and our centre runs alongside Leeds Liverpool Canal. And we work with a range and diverse range of communities of young people across the city. And we do all sorts of fun activities such as climbing, canoeing, bushcraft, and generally all things outside. More about our site. We are a 17-acre site, and I like to say that we've sort of been unconsciously rewilding here for many years. I don't think people previous to me had cared about half of the site, and they sort of just left it to its own nature. And it's amazing down there. There's everything and anything down there, and it's great to see. And when I started in my role as the lead activity worker, I embraced that wildness, and we found some access paths through them, and were able to take groups down there. Even though we have allowed wildness in, it still needs to be a functional activity centre. So it's quite a balancing act in order to keep it rewilding at the forefront, but also to be an activity centre as well. The most important thing about becoming the lead activity worker is I wanted the centre to sort of become a stepping stone in young people's lives to start their rewilding journey, or start their connection to nature journey. Just like I had the opportunity in my childhood in that amazing place in Northumberland, many thousands of young people across the city in Leeds may not have that connection that I had. So I wanted to allow this centre to be that connection for them. A few months ago, we had a habitat survey done, and was found was mainly a dominant broadleaf woodland along the canal. We also have large areas of scrub and grassland that also run alongside near the canal, and it provides an excellent location for a high species biodiversity and a corridor along to Kirkstall Abbey Park, and you see so much wildlife along there, and it's brilliant. Currently, we have wilded most areas that we can, just by letting nature do its work, but we also work closely with lots of different groups, mainly with our SEND, special educational needs schools, and volunteer groups, and they've came in and done many different types of jobs, such as tree planting in the areas that we can tree plant in. We've created wildflower boxes, wildflower meadows, and living roofs on some of our containers as well, to connect up some of the car parks where there wasn't as much nature. As well as speaking with the ground care contractors and stopping using of our pesticides, what they were using before I started, and relaxing the mowing in some areas as well. Now we have this sort of wild site in the middle of the city centre in Armley. What our main focus here, and my main focus, is to rewild the young people and rewild themselves, and to improve their nature connectedness like I had when I was younger. To do that, we do lots of different activities. One of the main ones that we do to sort of connect those people, that one of my personal favourite activities is bushcraft and survival skills. For people that don't know what bushcraft is, I like to say it's sort of having a knowledge of what nature can provide to you in order to survive. And it's about learning what nature can give to us and what we can give back. Some of the things we do in bushcraft is we use knives to carve items, where we do lots of fire lighting, and we do other woodworking things where we create natural cordage from trees and from plants. And it's an amazing start to finish process that young people can take something away with them that they've made in nature. We also do lots of foraging here on site, and we pick lots of wild food, and the young people can then pick that food literally from the ground and make something with it and see that whole process through, thus rewilding themselves, I feel. As well as the bushcraft, we do lots of nature IDing, and we do big nature walks across our site where we can ID trees, bugs, plants, and we look for animal prints, animal poo, bones. We do pond dipping as well. And I feel this is one of my favourite activities to do, because young people really get stuck in, and they're just always very excited to see a bit of poo on the ground or see a track and find out what it is. And I just have the same excitement every time I see it as well. As well as this sort of stuff, we also like to do some therapy and nature connection activities. We work a lot with children with additional needs, and we run a provision for these young people for after school and in holiday clubs. And they love to do these sorts of things. We do lots of nature art with nature paintbrushes, willow weaving. We create lots of different things, as well as getting into the woods, and we go and hug our trees, all the ones that they've named. We also do blindfold tree games. And we also just like to sort of lay on the grass and look up into the sky, or look into a hedge, look into all the different habitats and spot what we can see. As well as these nature connections, we also offer work experience for these groups. And they have done things such as building living fences, they've sowed wildflower meadows, they've done the tree planting, and they've done bug hotel building. And they just really get a lot from it, and it's amazing to see. As well as this, I'm also a member, as Claire said, of the Yorkshire Rewilding Committee, and I have been for about 6 months, I say now, and it's enabled me to meet lots of different communities who are doing rewilding in a different sense, and it's really nice to see all the people who are passionate about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. That was, I don't know about anybody else, but that just made me feel really positive about the future, that young people in Leeds have got this resource that you're able to give them. That's really fantastic, and it sounds a lot of fun. Can I come and have a day there? Sounds brilliant. Right, well, thank you, everybody. I think we're going to move on to our main panel discussion now, if that's okay. The first question I'm going to ask you all to answer, and then we'll get into questions that perhaps one or two of you will feel more qualified or more enthusiastic to talk about. So our first question, and it's kind of the first question I'm hoping that the audience will be thinking about, is the best way to start out. How can we start out in community rewilding? What do you need? Have you got any practical tips? Would anybody like to go first?
I'm happy to go first, Claire, if you like.
Brill, thank you, Jo.
Yeah, so I'd say the first step really should be to connect with other people. So reach out into your community, kind of find out what other people feel about the place or your idea or your project. Use maybe social media groups locally to kind of reach out to a wider group, maybe connect with other groups that operate in the area. So maybe not even anything to do with nature, but, you know, you could have a mother and toddler group or a local history group, or, you know, or even just get down the local pub and just start having conversations with people so that you build up a kind of shared goal around what it is that you want to do. And maybe think about holding an event or a consultation session so you can invite your community to be involved. But identify who else you need to involve. Is there a landowner or a local authority that you need to be having conversations with early on? And then the other thing is really just to observe before you plan. So, you know, we get asked a lot to come out and look at spaces and advise people around what people could do to improve the area for nature. But actually our first thing is always to say, just pause and watch, record what species are growing there, observe what species of wildlife are using your site, how they're using it, observe the kind of, you know, human activity on your site as well. You know, you might have regular dog walkers or sort of users of that space that you want to talk to. Test the soil type, find out about the aspect where the sun hits in the morning, where it moves to it later on in the evening. Is it wet, is it dry? And you know, that will all help you to decide what the best thing for that particular space is. You know, are there natural areas of wetland, or you know, that you could then sort of think about kind of how you would then rewild that space, using what's already there rather than trying to come in and start from scratch.
Great, that sounds lovely advice. So really getting to know your site before you try and bring anything new to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Karen, anything other that you found?
Ours is site-based. There are a couple of sites, but it's also, we did an overview about community involvement and working with the local authorities. So we had a sort of scoping document for all the things that we might want to do. And then that, sometimes things that happened in the Millscroft Wildlife Network, you'd think, wow, they were geniuses to work that out. But it was all serendipity. Things just fell into place. So we did have an idea of the different things we might do. And then it turned out that as different people came who were interested in what we were wanting to do, they had the skills to choose to do this bit, to make the website, or to go out at 6:30 in the morning and rake up a field and different things. And that was really good. So to have a wide spectrum of what it is we might be doing, and we did it on a parish map. So we took Millscroft Parish and just looked at things within that map, which was a church and schools and things. And then we looked at the process of what we might do. And then we got in touch with Yorkshire Wildlife Trust Rewilding, and that was a breakthrough. And they encouraged us to do a case study. And by the time we did the case study, we already had some things were coming into place. But it was really good because we sat and talked about what we wanted to do, who wanted to do what, how we would go about it, what our principles were, what our philosophy was. And that meant that by the time we'd been going for a few months, we had quite a firm base about who could do what and what we wanted to do and what we didn't want to do. And that really helped. And then the other thing I think is that surprised me is there's a great many resources. There's the Hay Foundation, and they have a website called Beacon, and there's the Green and Blue Social Prescribing Project, and there's yourselves, the Rewilding Network, and there's a really large number of organizations that are there to help and that have resources. So it's taking time to get to know each other as well as the sites.
That's brilliant. That's such a clever way of doing things, to scope things out first and work out your relationships and where you might go from almost taking a boundary on a map and focusing on that area. And that's really interesting. Thank you. Francesca?
Well, I think I'd agree with all that's been said, but I'd also, I mean, particularly, you know, as you say, connecting with people. Social media is brilliant for doing that. You can set up, you know, your own Facebook page and get people, you know, and connect to all the local village communities that way too. But having a community outing somewhere really inspiring can really help to get people fired up to, you know, and you can see what other people have done. You can really get them to think, oh, well, we could do that ourselves, or, you know, we could, our street's perfect for Hedgehog Highway, or, you know, actually I could make my garden slightly wilder just by leaving that patch, or, you know, it doesn't matter almost what it is, whether you're going to see other wild gardens or other, you know, other people's trust or nature play patches or whatever. It's having some sort of group outing can be really kick things off, I think.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I think that visualization of how things can look really helps people, especially when you're at the start. And of course, we have our site visit programme from the Yorkshire Rewilding Network coming up this summer, where you can come and do exactly that. So we'll make sure that if you check out our website, we'll have all the information there. Tom, you've got the slightly harder one of answering last, and there's been lots of great answers already, but I'm sure you've got something different to say.
Definitely. I think I'd just obviously reiterate all of the points, but I'll sort of just speak from my own sort of experience and how I did it here. Well, once I understood that I wanted to rewild this place, or thought that I could make it more wild than it already was, as it was definitely identifying where we could do it and getting the surveys done, or understanding what could be improved in certain areas and what had to stay the same due to the centres running. So there's a few fields where they do need to be cut because football teams come and use them. So it's not everywhere that we can rewild. That's unfortunate. Some of the downfalls of this centre.
Yes.
But after that, then I was able to speak to my manager and then the contractors who came to the site. And one of the big things was to stop them using the pesticides that they were spraying around the building, which didn't need to be done. So getting that stopped was one of the first things I wanted to do. And then was mainly just to leave areas to grow and note down what happened, what species grew, what did we see there, using the groups that came to do this in a sort of bio-blitzing way, as we would sit there and watch one area for 15 minutes and note down all of the birds we saw or what different plants we saw, and did that every 3 months and see what we got. That's a great way to start out. Definitely is connecting to other rewilders. I think about a few months in, I found out about the Yorkshire Rewilding Network on a Google search, and I emailed, and then I think a few days later they were back in touch, and I'd already joined into the network and into the forum. And the Yorkshire Rewilding Network forum is a really good place for information sharing and understanding and what's best to do on your site. And they have a wild exchange area as well, where you can swap for equipment or swap for any spare things that people have, whether it's seeds, trees, anything that they might have. So that was definitely a big help. Definitely connecting to people was the easiest way I found.
Brilliant. And I think you make an interesting point about if land is owned by local authorities, because certainly we've been doing some rewilding in Otley on council land, and you do have to get permission, and there are certain reasons why grass is mown in a certain way, or you can't rewild in a certain area, we've found, because something that you never think of, but they'll tell you that actually there's utilities under that land that they need to have access to. And so if you planted trees, that wasn't possible, but you can then move forward and maybe do a wildflower meadow or something like that, because that wouldn't affect the utilities. So that kind of scoping that Karen was talking about, and what you've all talked about, talking to other people and finding out what your land is, who owns it, what's happening there, is a really good thing to start with, because you can sometimes have amazing plans which are scuppered quite early if there's a gas mains underneath it, basically. Okay, we'll move on to our second question, unless anybody else has got anything burning to say. Did we miss anything there?
I was just going to add, Claire, we both myself and Tom, and I think a couple of the others mentioned about recording what you see on your space, and often we do get asked if we can come out and do, you know, kind of ecological surveys and that kind of thing, and it's really tricky because we don't have a huge amount of capacity within our team. But what we're trying to do is encourage people to record species themselves. There's so many amazing apps out there at the moment, and the one that we sort of go to is iNaturalist,
Yes.
because all of those records then get uploaded into the database, and you're starting from scratch to build that baseline species data yourself. And it's far better to involve people in doing that rather than us just parachuting in, doing a survey and disappearing again. It's much more effective, and communities are there long term, so they can continue to record, change over time as well on that site. So iNaturalist is a good one to download if you haven't already got it.
Brilliant. And that's a national app, isn't it?
It
Jo?
is,
that right?
Yeah, worldwide actually.
Right. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Okay. Right, we'll move on to our second question. So this is, how can we ensure rewilding is inclusive and can be accessed by all communities and all people within those communities? I think I'm going to go to Tom on this one to start with, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is at the forefront of what we do at West Leeds. We've got a range of diverse groups who come here, and especially from different types of income, from backgrounds of across Leeds, and it's ensuring that they have access to spaces like this and to sort of understand rewilding potentially in different ways. The needs of certain groups that come here are a lot different, and some groups might not engage with sitting down and watching birds and ticking them all off, but it's finding something that they will engage with. And whether that's lighting a fire or whether that's carving a bit of wood, that engagement into the rewilding is going to start their passion. I also think for rewilding to be inclusive, engagement with those communities at the core is really important. And I found that in every community or in every place I've been, there's always tends to be one passionate person at least. And it's about finding that passionate person in that community. And if you find that passionate person within that community, you're then able to talk to them and get the feedback that they need. They give to you about how you can be more inclusive for that community. And then once you've found that person, you can then act on that feedback, and then you're able to make the changes for rewilding to be accessed for them. And as well, trying to keep the activities at a low to no cost to get involved and ensure the projects are done in all sort of urban areas across across cities or anywhere really.
That's brilliant. That's really great, Tom, because I guess the environmental sector and rewilding, people have an idea of country estates and far away places and expensive trips and travel, and obviously it doesn't have to be like that, and it must not be like that to make it really accessible, particularly to people who live in the centre of cities.
Yeah, it's important that everybody's engaged with it, otherwise we're not going to have as much people behind it. And I think if we get more people in this sort of city centres or in these urban areas to start their passions, then it'll grow more across the population.
I want to add too that I think it's important not to make assumptions. I think when you're trying to think what do people need for something to be accessible, it's important to actually ask them rather than, I'm thinking about perhaps wheelchair users. You think, oh, well, maybe you've got to put, a tarmac path down for them. And actually, when you talk to some, you discover that amazing wheelchairs out there that can go across really rough terrain, and they don't want a tarmac path. So that's one example. Is finding the community and actually finding out what they want and not being afraid to ask. Get them to help, basically, whatever it is.
That's brilliant, and I know that getting the whole community involved with the purchase of Western Woods was really important, wasn't it? Because it was a huge cross section of the town who actually gave money and gave support, and that was how we did it in the end.
We had over 1,500 people gave money. It wasn't often. I mean, children gave their pocket money. It was lovely to see, and I think they're all really still engaged with it. They really know about the woods, and they're really looking forward to getting stuck in and doing stuff, and that's beautiful to see. A true community, and I think the fact they all gave some money means they really feel they have a stake, which is good.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because there's so few people who do own land now. Community rewilding, I think that's something I wanted to draw out. It does give people that connection to nature when they don't have a garden or a large piece of land themselves. They can make that stake in it and make that connection through coming together and working in nature. Karen and Joe, have you got anything you'd like to add about inclusivity or access?
Yeah, I mean, I totally echo what Tom and Francesca have said. I mean, one of my kind of points is always about that kind of involving people from different backgrounds, faiths, races, or lived experiences. Absolutely, if you're going to put in a path, involve people who do use wheelchairs, mums who use pushchairs, that kind of thing. But also think about accessible language as well, because I think it's very easy, we all understand rewilding, we've read the books, we've maybe got a little bit of a kind of sort of scientific background, but not everybody has. And I think it's really important to think about the language that you're using and sort of say what you mean almost. One of the things we've done with a lot of our toolkits is try to write them in plain English, and so it's really accessible language. So kind of maybe instead of using terms like rewilding, we could think about what is it that we actually mean when we say that, and kind of use that instead. So helping places to be better for wildlife makes more sense to more people. And then the other thing is just thinking about those kind of barriers that exist. Tom mentioned about the cost, that that can be a barrier. But there's lots of barriers to people kind of connecting with rewilding and accessing green space. So thinking about kind of maybe having things in different languages, or having a sort of interpreter present, or somebody who can translate at practical work days if you've got a large population who speak a different language. So it maybe think about providing food, if that is something that will attract a different audience into to be involved. So yeah, just thinking about those sort of inclusive practices and accessible language, really.
Brilliant, thank you. And I know that some people or different people connect with nature in different ways, don't they? A bit like what Tom was saying. Some people do want to come and bird watch, but for some people it's a real kind of spiritual or cultural experience, and they want to connect in a different way. They might just want to come and sit and listen, or react in a totally different way. So it's kind of letting people know that that's okay, that however they want to connect with nature, they don't need to know all the right words or have the right gear even. You can come along as you are, and it's for you as well.
Absolutely.
Karen, did you want to add anything to this?
I think for us it's very early days, because although we've been going for 2 years, we've been linking to the local authority and to the parish council and to the schools and to the other groups around in a way. And the event we're having on the 6th of April is the first time we've sort of gone public, really. And the leaflet, which is going door to door, is the first time we've gone out in that way. When we're doing the specification for the ecological management plans, we've also included in that we want interpretation facilities for the schools to be able to use. And when we're looking at that, we've got connections with the schools, so we'll ask the teachers what would be useful. But that's the whole idea. So, for instance, we know about that's one of the areas needs some bench seats, because people can walk to it. But if there was a bench seat there, some other people who can't walk that far could walk to it and sit down and then come back again. But this going public is going to be new for us.
It's very exciting. Are you hoping that you're going to get new volunteers, or what do you hope from
it
going
looks as
public?
If we got the money for doing the leaflet, and then we found out there aren't any companies that can deliver the leaflets, so we had to get volunteers to do it. And there's an organization called the Wombles Community Group, and they pick up litter, so they have stepped forward and they've said, oh, we'll help you deliver your leaflets, which is just fantastic. And then also the civic society, there's some people from the civic society have come forward. So I would think that some of those people will be involved in the longer term, because it might be that they like hedgehogs, so they'll be involved in maybe becoming hedgehog champions. So people offering us services are also people that then become involved in one way or another. And in doing the leaflet and arranging the event, we've had to, people who've been on the periphery, we've had to go to them and say, look, can you read through this insurance, because we've got to sign it now. And they have. So it's sort of, the more jobs you've got, the more it brings more people in to be involved.
It's brilliant. And of course, the more inclusive you are, the more skills that you bring in, and the more opinions and interests and people who can do things like you say. I mean, things that you wouldn't, when I started out in community rewilding, you don't really think, well, we're going to have somebody who can deal with buying land and all the conveyancing. You don't really think, oh, we really need an accountant to help out with that, or we could do with a scientist for this, or a lawyer for that. the more people you have involved, the more skill and the easier you can move forward. So that's
And
brilliant.
our scientist made our website, so you just can't tell
No,
what's going to go on.
exactly. And you made a really good point about the leaflets as well, because we do a lot of digital sharing and a lot of social media, and of course some people aren't on that, and so printing things out and taking leaflets and taking information to where people are can be a really good way to be inclusive as well. Okay, thank you. Should we move on to the next, or did anybody else have anything more to say? Okay, well, I'm really interested to hear what you talk about this one, because this has been a challenge for me personally. So this is how can we best work with local authorities? Will new national policies and funding around local nature recovery plans, biodiversity net gain, and the climate biodiversity emergency action plans result in positive action for communities and for nature? Jo, do you want to tackle that to start with? Say something about that. It's a big question, I know, and a big challenge.
Yeah, that's fine. I had a sneaky suspicion you might pick on me first for this one, Claire. Yeah, it is challenging, and I think, you know, kind of it's challenging enough for us as organisations to work with the you know, multitude of local authorities across Yorkshire. Never mind for communities themselves. But I think ultimately it's all about kind of building relationships with the right people in your local authority. And I know, Karen, that's something that you've absolutely found that has worked for you, hasn't it, with your parish council? And, you know, kind of really sort of developing, you know, investing time in developing those relationships, I think is really key. If you're not sure where to start, you can go on your local authority website to find contact details. And even if it's not the right person, often they will put you in touch with the right person. Think about kind of what you can do for them when you're making a bit of an ask as well. I think sometimes it does help to go in with a bit of sort of like a mutually beneficial idea rather than just asking from them. So, you know, how could they benefit from, you know, kind of the you know, reduced mowing is a sort of obvious example, but it's not always that simple. So, you know, kind of go in prepared to listen and prepared to compromise as well, I think, a little bit to kind of get what you want. Finding that common ground. So, you know, really understanding their challenges and what their hopes are for the area as well, and what their plans are, because it might be that you go to them and say, you know, we've got this great idea, but actually they've already started working on, you know, plans to do something similar. So there might be some common ground there that you didn't know existed. And then with the LNRS, I think, you know, kind of, you know, Yorkshire Wildlife Trust absolutely see LNRS as a vital tool in achieving nature's recovery. There's no doubt about it. And we really want to see strategies that are ambitious, accountable and actioned. And in order to try and kind of help that to happen, we're involved at a very strategic level, contributing to their development, encouraging local authorities to use them in policy development and implementation. But actually what we need is communities to be kind of on the ground, feeding into them as well, so that it's not just environmental organisations that are doing that, and so that we're demonstrating that this is what people want. You know, it's not just us that are banging on about it, and obviously things like BNG is kind of one important delivery mechanism in this, but obviously not the only one.
Jo, just for people that don't know, the LNRS are the local nature recovery plans, and
Yeah.
these are plans that are being brought forward by local authorities, aren't they? And,
Yeah, they are.
And regionally at the moment, or certainly slightly smaller than regionally. West Yorkshire are doing one, aren't they?
There's
North Yorkshire.
North, east, south and west, basically, and they are a little bit high level at the moment. They're a bit strategic at the moment, but there are plans to involve more communities in helping to shape those, particularly when it comes down to the action plans. And I know there have been some of them are a little bit further ahead than others, and there have been some community consultation type events in some areas, but yeah, just look out for information on them. You know, we'll share as much as we can when we find out about how people can contribute.
And so in summary, they should be positive, but
Yeah.
communities need to try and engage with them as much as possible and make sure that authorities know what we're looking for in our area.
Yeah, that summed it up nicely, Claire. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got
Karen.
Yeah.
Yes, I was going to come to you, Karen, then we'll come to you, Francesca. Thank you.
So many rewilders are increasing public engagement and education, helping species into recovery and expanding and improving habitats, and improving connectivity, and assessing wider environmental concerns, flood risk, water quality, climate issues, improving public awareness, political interest, long-term plans and policies. I've written it down. So raising wildlife up the agenda when there are competing land use pressures, and reducing inappropriate land use practices, and integrating nature recovery with health and well-being. And those terms are exactly the different bits that are in these different policies, such as the local nature recovery plans, biodiversity net gain, climate biodiversity emergency action plans. So although different local authorities will be doing them differently, basically they're all pretty much fundamentally the same, and they are exactly what it is that we will want. So the more consultations we can get people to respond to by the people reading the consultations, that can be educated in itself. But if we can get a lot of responses in, then the local authority officers who are sitting there wanting to do this, if they've got a whole load of public saying, yeah, we do want this, that supports them. And the same for the politicians. So we're going to the local authorities and saying, we want this and that and the other, but quite often they don't disagree. They would like it, but they've been told that the public want things to be kept neat and tidy and all that. And they're a bit behind the times, that actually the public have changed now. So the more we can involve people and demystify these policies, the more power and influence we have to change the politicians, who can then give the officers the permission to do these things. And I won't go into details because I could talk for a long time about cemeteries, but cemeteries are a fantastic case study because they're local, they've got very good wildlife. A lot of local people use them in terms of the health issues. They're a small walk a lot of people can go for small walks to them, so they're really fantastic. So nationally, there should be nationally, central government should be saying, we've got a necklace of these burial grounds, which also in terms of inclusivity, it's not just Church of England, it's all sorts of religions. So if central government are giving all wildlife networks an extra member of staff to do burial ground work, living churchyard work, and there's an organisation called Caring for God's Acre to give them more services, and there's a national federation of friends of churchyards. So central government should be then giving the resources to these different organisations, and every local authority should be having extra staff and training and new equipment just to do burial grounds. So that's one strategic thing. If you look at burial grounds and you take it up to regional level and you take it up to a national level, it means that we ought to be going above, we ought to be going to central government. So we're doing it from the bottom up and from the top down. And my case study is cemeteries, but I think it's the same for a lot of other habitats and areas.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Francesca, I know you wanted to add something.
I did, but I just wanted to say, I think from my experience of working with parish councils, really pushing on an open door. As you said, a lot of them just want permission to do it. They all see what's needed, but they're terrified of, doing the wrong thing because they think that, as you say, they're out of step. I mean, as you say, we got a patch of the park left cut one year, and nobody complained. I mean, it was everybody, and in fact, there was lots of positive, and yet the person who had who'd left the patch said, oh, I don't know if we're going to be, there will be lots of trouble. There just wasn't. And the other thing I wanted to add was about the BNG, the biodiversity net gain that should be coming in, which is, for those who don't know it, the idea is that any developers should have to increase the biodiversity by 10% from what was on the land that they have built on. So either on the site itself or elsewhere. So this is great for groups like ours who might be able to basically, they can possibly buy the net gain services from our groups, from perhaps tree planting or whatever it is that counts, obviously, or whether it's putting up bat boxes or there'll be lots of different ways of doing it, but that's something to sort of watch out for if you've got developers and you're get talking to them, because they'll be looking for ways of being able to tick that off, and they'll have money to do it.
Brilliant, thank you. I've just noticed something in the chat actually that inspires me to say something more about this. In that some local authorities are very keen, as we've heard in Molescroft, and Francesca's also had positive experiences, but you can have really difficult experiences, and the local authority can find it very difficult to allow you to do relaxed mowing and things like that. And in Otley, we actually made our own nature recovery plan for the town. We got a biodiversity audit, and we worked with ecologists, and we now have a plan, a kind of 5-year plan to improve nature and to link up our wildlife corridors in Otley. And the great thing about this is one, that it can be shared with other communities, and we're hoping to do that. In fact, we've started doing that across Leeds. And the other thing is that you can, if you have information about the land that you want to rewild, and you know that there's wildlife there, and you know how it can be improved, you can use that information to work with councils and to draw up agreements with them, in order to kind of, it builds trust and it builds a relationship. If you've really done some of the work to start with, and you have a clear plan of what you want to do, and you can explain why that would be a really good thing to have a community orchard or to have a wildflower meadow, how it's great for the local people, how it's great because it's outside a housing association building and it can bring older people together, or the children can learn about it from the local school. You can sometimes find that it's a really useful kind of bargaining tool in a meeting with a landowner or a local authority, and it kind of makes it a bit easier for them to allow you to do something that they can see as something a bit risky or outside of their normal things that they do, or outside of their assessment, or outside of contract. And things like that. So it can be, I realise a lot of us are talking about positive experiences, but it can be very challenging as well. And hopefully some of these new nature recovery plans and new funding measures and BNG will make it easier for councils to make it easier again for community rewilders. Tom, did you want to add anything before we move on to another question?
No, I don't really have anything to add onto that. I feel like all the points were made.
That's great, thank you.
I just wanted to say that East Riding are finding it's not a completely easy answer for East Riding. So that's part of the reason I think we need to help them with the policies and everything, because they're undergoing cuts and things like that, and
yeah,
so they're not able to just say yes to everything by any means.
I think councils are having a very tough time in general, aren't they? And change is very difficult when you're cut to the, your budgets are cut so small.
Yes.
We're going to move on to a new question, which I think Tom will be able to help us out with, which is, what are some of the key ways people in urban spaces can rewild or connect with rewilding and make a difference?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Well, first of all, I said that best thing for people to do is find and look for those community groups that might be around you, and meet up with those fellow rewilders, whether that's on social media, on different forums, or just generally closest to you. Meeting those people really starts to inspire your own rewilding journey, I think, and it has when I've met people through the Rewilding Network. And then with these groups, you can investigate where you could begin some rewilding projects, whether it's in some area around your local houses or local park, or somewhere completely different. More sort of localizing for people who might not have access to those people. If you just go to your local park or your local green space and take a while to embrace yourself and those surroundings and listen to the sounds you hear, sort of touch the ground, touch the trees, touch the plants, and then you can sort of rewild yourself. And I feel once that rewilding of yourself gets done, you then sort of kickstarting your journey to appreciate nature a lot more and get involved. I also wrote about sort of reading up on rewilding principles on websites and resources. And there's lots of books, as Joe mentioned, out there that are really inspiring to read, as well as writing to your local MP and sort of encouraging more spaces for biodiversity increase and sort of less management, and speaking with local authorities can really connect you with it as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Tom. Anybody else want to come
I was just
in?
going to say, yeah, I think one that, as Karen pointed out too, but I think one of the things that local people can do is to get to know their area well and help the local council understand it as well. So, I mean, you know, your recovery plan for Otley, for instance, does exactly that. But you know, knowing where the local toad crossings are, for instance, so that you can ensure that, you know, the vital point in a year when the toads are trying to cross that road, that, you know, they've got space to do so and it's not being dug up or whatever. And also there's encouraging, you know, working out where trees can go back on streets, where you could actually lift paving stones, and perhaps you don't need the amount of paving they've given you. You know, actually take a corner out and have a little patch of stuff growing there, or guerrilla gardening of some sort. I think there's quite a lot you can do, but certainly knowing making a plan of what you've already got and making sure that you know what's there, sort of surveying it, and then, you know, spreading the word is very important.
Can't underestimate the power of local knowledge, can you? You know, really knowing your patch and seeing the potential that perhaps others don't see.
Yeah.
Joe, have you got anything to add on
that? Yeah, I mean, totally agree with Tom and Francesca again, that, you know, that sort of finding out what's happening locally, being inspired by nature, but also what other people are doing for nature, and start small. You know, you can start in your own back garden if you're lucky enough to have one. I mean, gardens make up, I think, around 24% of urban areas. So actually, if everybody rewild the back garden, actually imagine, you know, the impact that we'd make. And gardens often, if they're allowed to join up, can create those really important nature corridors through urban spaces as well. So start small and then reach out, find other people who are interested in rewilding, who are maybe doing rewilding already, connect with them, and build from there. You know, kind of look at how you can do more within your community. You know, like Francesca said, if you get to know your area, you'll soon identify places that could be left a little bit wild. Maybe the grass could be left long there. Maybe that hedge doesn't need cutting. You know, kind of maybe we could help nature along by doing some planting in a particular area, that kind of thing. When you start to really know your area, you'll have these places in mind, and chances are other people will have thought of that too.
And it doesn't have to. I know a lot of people will be thinking, gosh, it's really scary to go out and try and meet new people in the community and start these kind of things up, but it could be your neighbours, couldn't it? I mean, you can make a really important wildlife corridor right where you live. I'm thinking for people that even don't have gardens, it sounds, you know, you can't make any difference with some pots and a window box, which seems a very small contribution. But if you think then you spoke to all your neighbours in your street and everybody did that, you've suddenly got a really nice wildlife corridor starting just with chatting to people that you know really well already. So it's kind of, I think, valuing as well that small things can make a big difference, particularly if lots of people come together and do the same thing or a similar thing.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what they've done in Kippax near Leeds. And there's an amazing case study on our Team Wilder webpage about how they just came together. Started with one lady who was sort of like creating a wildlife haven in her garden and on the green space next to her garden, and then everybody else has followed suit, got involved, and now they've got this incredible wildlife corridor through their community. So yeah, it can start from just you doing something visibly for nature, and others will get involved.
And if you stick a little sign in your garden explaining that it's meant to be rewilded, or whatever you want to call it, it gets people talking. If they start, thinking, what's that? Or maybe it's meant to be. It can help.
It looks intentional rather than you just couldn't be bothered to mow your lawn, doesn't it?
That's it. Yes.
And it has a ripple effect. There's an organisation called Barnby Moor, and we went to see them, and they've been doing it for a long time. And it's absolutely beautiful what it is that they've achieved. And that sort of spurred us on and was very inspiring for us. So it's lovely to be able to share these ideas and the successes and things.
Brilliant. Well, we're getting very close to the end of our panel discussion, and we're going to go on to audience questions in a minute. But I would just like to ask all of the panelists, we're in the business of hope here with Rewilding and with positivity. And so I'd like to ask you all to just give us your favourite moment or a key piece of advice or positivity from your community rewilding experience. And I don't mind who goes first. Tom, I'm going to go for you.
Yep, I can go first. So yeah, mine is sort of a general sort of emotional feeling, I guess, about community rewilding. During COVID and after COVID, I definitely think that the state of the world and everything that was going on, I was very sort of environmentally anxious and quite petrified of climate change, and felt pretty negative about it all. And it gave me a really sort of sense of bad mental health at a certain point. And I definitely think getting involved with the communities through work as well, with the groups that I've worked with at work, and then also with people involved with the Yorkshire Rewilding Network, has given me that hope and that sense of there are people doing the right things, and we can change the future. And that sense of hope is really instilled a positive mental health feeling in me, which is great.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Tom.
Leading on from that, I would say that in a way, you can see the climate emergency as something that humans have got us into, and my answer to that is, well, humans can get us out of it as well. We have the will, we have the means, and we understand what we're doing now. And so I think that's the answer, that we can, it's possible and we can do it, and we can start locally and really enjoy the process as well.
Karen, you look like you're ready.
Because of Yorkshire Wildlife Trust's case study, quite a few organisations, parish councils and everything in East Riding said, we'd not want to know about this. So we invited them around for a cup of tea and fruitcake and site visits, as we do. And it was going to be about 8, and then it was 10. And then on the day it was 18. And my garden is not that big. But it was just remarkable how the people in Millscroft Wildlife Network, one person went and got some more chairs, and then he went and got more chairs, and then he went and got more mugs. And then 2 people took over the kitchen and did all the drinks and everything. And then one of us, whenever we were at the site visits, she's just wonderful about the way she talks about the sites. And it was very inspiring. I felt so proud of them, and so to be part of something like that felt remarkable. And then there's a politician who said she didn't know whether she wanted to get involved in something around. She said, would you want to be on the night bus with these people? And I was thinking, I'd definitely like to be in the night bus with these people. It's just, so it's that sense of hope. And also, I, like you, Tom, I felt despondent. And Francesca, what you were saying about human beings making bad decisions, I felt very despondent. But this last couple of years, I'm flabbergasted about how much intelligence and kindness and warmth and hope these people that I'm coming across have got. So it's great.
That's brilliant, Karen. Thank you. And Joe, your
that's
advice or champagne.
Thank you. That's lovely to hear, Karen. I really like the idea of a Team Wilder night bus. So For me, actually kind of what I was going to say follows perfectly on from what Karen's just said. For me, it's very much about that celebrating and sharing success, no matter how small. It's so important in terms of really helping people to feel like they're making a difference, because they are, but also like not underestimating that how helpful your story is to others. And it really does give me a warm, fuzzy feeling inside when our community groups share stories of what they've achieved, because it's not our success story, it's theirs. It's their success stories, and we're always really careful about kind of like making sure that it's not about us taking the credit, it's about us providing that platform to share other people's stories and what they've done so that they can inspire others. So I think, yeah, just kind of, even if it means like writing a little article in your parish magazine, or getting an article in a local paper, or going on a local radio station, I know it's not everybody's comfort zone, but it's absolutely worth it to get the message out there, and then you'll inspire others to do the same. And if everybody inspires one person, just imagine the difference we could make.
Wow, that's brilliant. How positive. I feel really, really, really inspired and much more excited about the future. Thank you, everyone. That's brilliant. Now, I think Jeff's joining here, so I'm hoping we've got some audience questions to finish our session tonight.
We have, thanks, Claire. Evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Davids. I'm one of the trustees of YRN, and I've just loved all 5 of you talking, and 5 stars of the show plus Karen's fruitcake, I think, is the one we must forget to
I want to try it.
in Molescroft.
Yeah.
I'm reliably informed. So yes, we have got questions from the audience. Room for a couple more. If you've got any that have just occurred to you, please pop them in the Q&A and I'll pick them up from there. But the first one I'd like to ask is about the term rewilding itself. When we set up YRN, we chose very deliberately to use the R word and try and be very pragmatic about it, inclusive about it, and try and kind of rehabilitate what had been a very polarized word. We're in a bit of an echo chamber and might think that's okay. What responses do you get out in communities to the word rewilding?
We are quite careful not to use it, in fact, and prefer to use nature recovery because as we say, it becomes very, people immediately sort of close up and think, you're some sort of weirdo, and yeah, so we carry on doing it, but just don't call it that, basically, which is a shame, because I see no problem with the word, but obviously we have to try and bring people in, not frighten them off. So if we have to, we have to.
Yeah, I'd echo what Francesca's just said as well. I mean, we are quite careful as an organisation when we use it. We'll use it where we really mean rewilding and that sort of landscape scale recovery. But in urban spaces, we tend to talk more about supporting nature's recovery, helping wildlife, that kind of sort of more language that more people understand, I suppose, and can connect with.
My understanding about rewilding is to do with the process about natural things like, but I think for a lot of people it isn't. It's to do with large areas of land and different species and different predatory introduction, that sort of thing. So I think for us to use it in Molescroft, I think people would think it was silly because they wouldn't understand that we're not talking about big areas of land. We're talking about a philosophy and a way of being. And that conversation would be too complicated to say to people. So we tend to not use it.
Those aren't surprising answers. All I would say is when you have engaged people, it is fascinating if you start to introduce the word, because we find it always gets engagement. It can sometimes get a challenge, but if it's presented as a pragmatic, much more the connection with nature and not trying to think that we know all the answers. So if we do this, this and this, that and that will happen, but allowing nature to surprise us is something within Yorkshire Rewilding Network we've been very conscious of what could be the reaction, but actually we found it really engaging and positive when you've got time to engage with people. In a very short exchange, it can be difficult, but I would urge you as just to try out with a few and sort of see what their understanding of it is, because it is evolving all the time from you can't have wolves and bears in Harrogate to maybe nature does know best and we should stop being so dominant and above it. But
And
yeah.
now it's seen that there's a lot of money in rewilding, and other places, that a lot of other states are going to be going for rewilding because it's something which is very attractive to a lot of people now, which has changed over the time, I think.
That's really good evidence, I think, Karen, for why it is a more appealing term to people, that it's become a sort of a retail offer. Some of the biggest states see it as a way of attracting people to come and see something, which you would suggest is evidence that it's appealing rather than alienating. So that's sort of the language and the discourse we try to get into. But you're right, you have to have chance to get beyond isn't that big landowners. And one of the things within YRN we're keen on is a spectrum of rewilding, which goes back to it may have been you, Karen, it may not have, a very early comment about rewilding being much around a mindset. So we had a discussion on Sunday as we were looking at future direction of YRN about what characterizes what we would think of as rewilding. And much of that comes back to mindset. And whether you're allowing nature to take its course or trying to manage and control. So I don't know, in the nature recovery work that you do any of you talk about sort of different levels of processes that can happen at different scales? Or is it more kind of a more traditional conservation message of, you know, we could try doing this and expect that to happen, and this is appropriate for this site? How do you play that dynamic of appropriate to a site rather than making people think they have to be on a huge scale?
We had an open wild garden session a day a year ago, and that was very interesting because what we did was open about 6 gardens to anyone who wanted to come see them, and they could see exactly how different wild gardens could be, but and still be attractive, and that was very useful for opening discussions about, you know, what people could do and what they could let nature do, basically, and where they could stand back. And I think that was a particularly good way of introducing people to the concept of not being in full charge anymore, perhaps enjoying what nature brings you. But I am concerned that, you know, by using the term rewilding, we're only encouraging people who are already on board, if you like, and it's really important that we try and include people who, or change, you know, help bring in people who perhaps find it a bit alarming, you know, and find ways that we can do that which doesn't scare them off.
Tom, I think you wanted to say something earlier. I'm wondering whether with young people you are talking about rewilding and rewilding yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say that when it comes to young people, we like to be as wild as possible. And if they're here for a whole day, we start the day as like a wild morning and go paint our faces with mud and then end up just climbing trees and running about. And I think with the young people especially, I've then talked about later in the day, some days, about rewilding processes and at larger scales and at smaller scales, and that'll be around a fire and they're very keen to listen. So I think for me, I always try and encourage talking and using rewilding as a word, because I find young people engage with the word wild very well.
That's brilliant. I thought they might.
Yeah, and I was just going to add that certainly with the community groups that we're supporting, we do talk about, you know, kind of how you can allow nature to lead, you know, so we'll bring in a lot of the kind of rewilding principles, if you like, but kind of, again, back to our comments when we were talking about inclusion, it just making sure that it is, you know, we might use rewilding with the right audience, but it very much depends on kind of what's right for them. So we'll talk about making spaces wilder, if that's most appropriate with with them. And often, particularly in an urban setting, it is very much about kind of seeing humans as those sorts of agents for change. You know, there's an amazing chapter on urban rewilding in Isabella Tree's new book, and that very much sort of talks about people being those kind of change agents, because you're not necessarily going to have large herbivores in some quite small pockets of land, but you know, you might have a load of kids in wellies that are tromping around and kind of making the ground all like pitted and allowing tussocky grass to grow in places, you know. So yeah, he's just thinking about it slightly differently and in a much smaller scale.
Thank you. Yeah, there's just a couple of comments in the chat about how misunderstood a term it is, and I think a lot of that is from the way it was probably first popularized in this country, was much more polar. But we're still intent on rehabbing it over time. We don't insist that those we work with use the word. It's entirely up to others. If nature is recovering, that's great. But we really do just enjoy I think the energy and the positivity that we find amongst rewilders. We haven't got a word for it yet, but we're convinced there's a very distinctive noise when you get a group of rewilders together. And it sounds pretty much like Karen's conservatory often has that noise. It's not raucous, it's just a nice buzz and a bubble and very open discussions. So at that point, I think we're pretty much out of time. So thank you to Claire for chairing this evening's panel, to Joe, Karen, Tom and Francesca for participating so actively. Thanks to the audience. We did have about 60 people join in, and we hope that's been of interest. It is being recorded and will be on our YouTube, accessible by the website soon. If you'd like to join Waren's mailing list, you can find all that on our website of where to sign up. If you'd like to be kept in touch about what we're up to on Community Rewilding, please either put your name and email in the chat just to host some panelists now, or email us at info@yorkshireRewildingNetwork.org.uk. I will get in terrible trouble from the treasurer if I don't also say that we are a charity that relies on some grants, but mainly donations for our work. So if you've enjoyed this evening or the work that Waren does, we would be very grateful for any donation you can make. You can either go to the donations page on our website, scan the QR code, which for reasons I don't know has a small dinosaur in the middle of it, or you can text a donation from your mobile. So I'll leave this up, excuse me, and leave the chat open for a wee while. Thanks again for joining us. We'll resume our webinar program in the autumn, but before then we'll have a wonderful program of site visits. So watch out for those in our newsletters and on our website. There'll be sign-ups because it really is wonderful to see rewilding in action. And we've got some new sites this year that haven't been on our program before. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of the
Thank you.
evening.